Get off community property immediately. That's what Karen Whitmore screamed at me while I was just trying to grill a few burgers out back, thinking I'd finally found a little peace on a Sunday afternoon. You ever been yelled at by someone standing on your own land, waving a fat stack of official papers, threatening to call the cops because somehow you're trespassing on what your family's owned for decades? Yeah, welcome to my Sunday, friend. See, I'd inherited this place from Grandpa. God rest his stubborn old soul. Every deed, every plat map, you name it. Yet somehow Karen, the self-crowned queen of our HOA, had decided she now had the authority to kick me off my own property. And what she did next? Let's just say it turned everything I thought I knew about property rights upside down and shook the spare change out of its pockets. You ever have someone try to steal your home with nothing but a piece of paper and a smug little grin? Just wait. Late sunlight spilled across the lake as I fired up the grill, the kind of golden hour that used to mean peace around here. Ever since I took over Grandpa's place 6 months back, Sunday barbecues became my way of shaking off long days at the clinic. The lake behind the house, glassy and low, the shoreline showing more than usual. One of those years where the water felt like it was receding from everything, including common sense. I glanced at Grandpa's old brass compass hammered into a garden post. Said a man should always know his direction. It pointed west, as usual, and I figured the only thing going sideways today would be my attempt at medium rare. Then I heard footsteps crunching on the grass. Thought maybe it was Sarah coming out with a beer. Nope. Out came Karen, HOA president in all her glory, storming across my lawn like she owned the weather. White blouse, navy slacks, expensive everything, and an expression that could freeze boiling water. "You're violating HOA regulations," she barked, voice sharp as a winter wind, like we were in a courtroom, and she was the judge, jury, and executioner. "This lakefront is now temporary community property under the Lakefront Access Project," she announced, gesturing at the water like she was calling a crime scene. I just stared at her. My grandpa bought this place in '94 after 30 years selling insurance, and every county record says our line runs a good 20 feet past the high water mark. "I think there's been some kind of mistake," I said, trying to keep calm. "This is private property. Been in my family 30 years. I've got the deed if you want to see it." That's when she gave me the kind of smile you get from a rattlesnake, thin and cold. "I'm afraid you're the one who's mistaken." Out came a fat folder of official-looking documents. She claimed community access provisions for environmental preservation, said everyone got the notification in February's HOA newsletter. Let me back up a sec. When's the last time you actually read an HOA newsletter? Mine usually lands straight into recycling, sandwiched between supermarket coupons and those real estate ads with awkward family photos. "Look, I never got anything about this," I told her, turning off the grill. "But this is private land. I can prove it. No need for drama." I motioned to the house, hoping maybe she'd at least look at the paperwork and realize her mistake. But nope. Karen whipped out her phone, started dialing with the slowest, most dramatic finger you've ever seen. Was she calling the HOA? City code enforcement? Nope. 911. The look on her face said she'd been waiting for this moment all week. Police? Yes, I need to report a trespasser on community property. The violator is refusing to leave. Now, just imagine standing there, spatula in hand, burgers getting cold, and suddenly you're the criminal. 15 minutes later, a cruiser rolled up. Officer Johnson looked like he'd refereed one too many neighborly squabbles, climbed out, and gave the whole circus a once-over. "What seems to be the issue?" he asked, eyeing Karen's folder, my abandoned grill, the whole sad scene. She launched into her speech, all about property conservation and urgent protection. Finally, Officer Johnson, looking about as comfortable as a man with a beehive in his pants, says, "Sir, this paperwork shows the HOA manages this area for conservation. I'll need you to pack up and clear the lakefront until this is sorted." Gut punch. Off my own land by a woman who'd never even met my grandpa. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains, probably relieved it wasn't their turn. As I hauled my grill inside, I caught sight of Grandpa's compass again. Suddenly it felt like it was spinning every which way. The lake looked lower, the property markers more exposed, like the world itself was tilting. After Karen and Johnson left, I stood at the kitchen window, just staring at what had been my land an hour earlier. Anger didn't hit right away. It was this creeping, icy doubt. If they could take this with paperwork and swagger, what else could they take? 48 hours later, a violation notice hit my inbox like a sucker punch. $500, unauthorized use of community property. There was a payment link, a PDF, the works. Sarah came home, took one look at my face, and knew something had gone sideways. She read the notice twice, disbelief turning to anger. They can't just declare our property community land and start fining us. Can they? Can they? Good question. Everything I knew about property law screamed, no, but Karen's confidence made me wonder. Word got around fast. Someone had recorded the cop confrontation, and now the whole neighborhood was buzzing. Some thought I was being railroaded. Others figured Karen must be right. After all, she had the documents. Mrs. Patterson from 3 houses down caught me grabbing the mail. Heard there's trouble with the HOA, she whispered. I kept it light. Karen's got a new theory about who owns the lakefront. She leaned in. She called an emergency HOA meeting for Thursday. Says she'll clear up any misconceptions about property rights. Thursday rolls around, and the community center feels more like a corporate boardroom. Karen, in her navy suit, the HOA logo projected behind her, folder open, everything staged to the inch. She clicks through PowerPoint slides, pollution graphs, restoration photos, forward-thinking initiatives, claims city planning approved it all. Everyone was notified through February's newsletter, except the documentation in her binder said revised URO 324, updated just 3 months ago. Odd, right? Nobody questioned her, just worried about property values and HOA fees, the practical stuff. But the whole time I kept thinking, if this was so above board, why did the paperwork keep changing? That's when I realized I needed to dig deeper. Friday morning, I found myself at the city planning office, folder in hand. Janet Thompson worked the counter. Small town, everyone knows everyone. After I explained, she started poking through records. Lakewood Heights, HOA recent boundary modifications. 2 versions popped up. One from 2018. HOA only managed the clubhouse and pool, nothing about lakefronts. Then one from 2024, suddenly community lakefront access zones. No public hearings, no environmental studies, no certified mail notices, just an application and an approval. Janet frowned. That's not normal. Major changes need hearings, legal reviews, notifications. This skips all that. She printed copies, pointed to something even weirder. The official seal on the new document had been updated in 2023, but the file claimed it was approved in 2022. That's odd, she said, just as her phone rang, a city manager, apparently wanting to know who was poking around records. That's when I realized Karen had friends in high places. They were watching. That afternoon, Karen called the house herself. Sarah handed me the phone like it was a live grenade. I understand you've been asking questions, Karen started, voice pure ice. Just remember, there are consequences to challenging legitimate environmental initiatives. People in positions of significant influence take these things very seriously. That wasn't a warning. It was a threat, dressed up in HOA legalese. I looked out at the lake, compass spinning in my hand. Grandpa's old concrete markers still sat exactly where they always had, defining my property line, but the world could apparently be moved by a few forged documents and the right amount of political swagger. Next came another emergency community meeting. This time, the local news showed up, and a city councilman named Blake Morrison stood shoulder to shoulder with Karen. He gave some big speech about environmental stewardship, clicked through more slides, quoted statutes, and tried to frame everything as a temporary management zone. I asked why no one was notified by certified mail. He dodged, saying newsletters and city websites met legal requirements. Karen chimed in, making it sound like it was my own fault for not paying attention. Most neighbors just wanted to know if they could still fish or kayak. Nobody seemed ready to challenge the whole scheme. As the meeting ended, I overheard Morrison and Karen whispering about accelerating the timeline. if anyone got too nosy. That's when I decided, enough's enough. I filed formal public records requests, FOIAs, everywhere. City, county, HOA, you name it. Cost me $200 and a whole morning, but I wanted the truth. Every email, every signature, every digital log. Karen called again, but this time she sounded rattled. Less like the queen, more like someone afraid the villagers were coming with torches. Filing frivolous requests is harassment, she snapped. You won't find anything. But her tone said otherwise. And what I found, it blew the doors off the story. The emails between Karen and Morrison showed they'd cooked up the whole environmental crisis before any study, before any public notice. Morrison wrote, "Emergency framework gives us the legal cover. Can implement management zones without the usual process." They'd even uploaded 2 versions of the approval document. Same day, same signatures, one with the new powers slipped in. The digital logs traced back to Morrison's own account. Armed with this, I marched back into Janet's office. Her eyes went wide as she scrolled through the evidence. "This isn't just a mistake," she said. "This is deliberate." And before we could say another word, in walked Karen with her lawyer. Suddenly, it wasn't a neighborly dispute. It was full-on war. Her attorney tried to shut things down, talking about confidential planning, threatening court action if we misused any documents. That's when I knew this wasn't about the lake or even environmentalism. It was about power, money, and the kind of arrogance that thinks regular folks won't fight back. I took my evidence home, spread it across the dining table, and watched as Karen and Morrison scrambled, trying to push through a city council vote to make their fake environmental zone permanent. But what they didn't count on was that someone in law enforcement would care. Turns out, a detective from the Financial Crimes Unit saw enough in those records to pay a visit. The next meeting wasn't the coronation Karen expected. Detective Murphy stood up and read out every detail. File manipulation, emails about creative property management, and $50,000 payments from Morrison's firm to Karen on the exact day those documents were uploaded. The room fell dead silent. Then, suddenly, it was camera flashes and 2 cops stepping forward to cuff Karen, reading her rights right there in front of the whole neighborhood. Morrison got arrested the same day. News went everywhere. Neighbors, old friends, people I barely remembered called to say they'd seen the footage. Karen and Morrison tried to spin it, but the paper trail was too strong. She lost her HOA post. He resigned from city council. The state pressed charges, fraud, conspiracy, bribery. They both pled out before Christmas. Karen got 18 months, Morrison 3 years. Funny thing, after the dust settled, the new HOA board held a vote. Every environmental restriction was overturned. The lakefront was mine again. Grandpa's markers never moved an inch. You know, it's easy to trust people with titles, paperwork, a fancy story. Most folks, me included, want to believe the system works. But sometimes the only thing standing between you and getting steamrolled is your willingness to ask the questions nobody else wants to ask. So here's my question for you. Would you have fought back or just let them take it? Drop a comment. Tell me where you stand on property rights, justice, and holding the powerful accountable. And if you ever find yourself staring down a Karen with a stack of fake paperwork, just remember, sometimes a little stubbornness and a whole lot of truth are all you need to set things right.